The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 5346 in the name of Liam-McArthur on postcode lottery for people with multiple sclerosis. This debate will be put without any question. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would members who wish to speak in the debate press the request to speak button now, and I call on Liam-McArthur to open the debate. Mr McArthur, you've got about 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Hopefully over the next half an hour or so we can achieve a number of things. Firstly, we have the opportunity to further raise awareness of what multiple sclerosis actually is, how the disease affects the lives of 10,500 sufferers in Scotland, as well as their family, friends and colleagues. Secondly, I hope we can build up a picture of where in the country we are meeting the needs of sufferers well, and where, as I believe is the case, there is room for improvement. And I look forward to hearing the experiences and contributions from colleagues across the Chamber, and thank them in advance, as well as those who signed the motion and allowed the debate to take place this evening. Thirdly, I am keen to put on record my admiration and gratitude for the work being done by a host of individuals and organisations in this field, from health professionals and researchers through to the MS Society, volunteers and support groups across the country. Without their efforts, the situation facing MS sufferers in Scotland would be unimaginably bleaker. It would be nice to think that along the way we might also be able to restore the tarnished reputation of the Vikings, whom certain tabloids have accused of being responsible for the high instances of MS found in Orkney, my colleague Tavish Scott's Shetland constituency and other parts of the north. This seems unfair and, more importantly, it is not supported by growing research evidence. The same research evidence, however, carried out by teams at Edinburgh and Aberdeen universities makes alarming reading for those in the Northern Isles. In a report published last year by Elizabeth Visser, Katie Wilde and James Wilson, himself an Arcadian, the incidence of MS in Orkney was found to have almost doubled since the 1980s to 402 per 100,000. For women in Orkney, the rates of diagnosis are running at an astonishing 1 in 170. Being world leaders in Neolithic archaeology, marine renewables or bird and sea life population is a source of great pride for many of my constituents. Knowing that the islands I represent boast the highest rate of MS anywhere on the planet is simply depressing. So, if it is not all the fault of our Viking ancestors, what are the reasons for this dramatic concentration of MS sufferers in Orkney, Shetland and other parts of the north of Scotland? A combination of genetics and environment appears to be the most credible answer at this stage, though, as Dr Wilson explains, these findings may reflect improved diagnostic methods, improved survival or rising incidence. Despite this uncertainty and the need for further research, vitamin D deficiency appears to be a determining factor. It has also long been acknowledged that MS was increasingly common amongst populations the further away from the equator one went. Indeed, while we have enjoyed some uncommonly sunny weather of late, visitors rarely head to the Northern Isles in search of a tan, though few who do come leave disappointed or leave without a ruddier complexion than the one they arrived with. The disease itself attacks the nerves in the brain and spinal cord, interrupting signals between the brain and the body. It is incurable, though treatment can be effective in delaying symptoms. Like the causes, these symptoms can be hard to pin down. They can include intense pain, mobility and coordination problems, severe depression, fatigue, incontinence and loss of vision. For some, there are periods of relapse and remission. For others, the pattern is one of progressive deterioration. This variety in the form the disease can take often makes life more complicated for sufferers and those around them. People often assume that sufferers will be wheelchair-bound or very old, yet diagnosis invariably happens between the age of 20 and 40, while many of the symptoms are invisible and can come and go. Neither is supporting those with a diagnosis straightforward. As Angela Monteith, a constituent who has been involved for many years helping fellow sufferers both directly and through her roles with the MS Society, pointed out, people who have just been diagnosed want to know what to expect. But this is difficult. The disease will never be the same for everyone, and it is almost impossible to predict the future post-diagnosis. So what is being done to help those affected? Well, as the title of this evening's debate suggests, the picture nationwide is patchy, unacceptably so. In 2009, clinical standards were published detailing the quality of services someone with a neurological condition should receive. There is a standard for MS, but a peer review in 2012 demonstrated that in many instances standards remain unmet. But rather than focus on where there are failings, it is perhaps more constructive and effective in promoting change to highlight those instances of good practice. NHS Dundee, for example, has a multidisciplinary team, including an MS physio and social worker, which works closely with the local branch of the MS Society in an excellent partnership between public and voluntary sectors. NHS Ayrshire and Arran's collaborative approach is also worthy of mention, and in particular the excellent Douglas Grant Rehab Centre. And I'm pleased to say NHS Orkney is meeting the MS standard for service provision. 2 groups have been set up to ensure this continues and to further enhance partnership working. These involve physios, speech therapists, doctors, OT, as well as local groups and charities representing people with MS and other neurological conditions. This approach in a small community with more than its fair share of sufferers is absolutely the right one, and I congratulate all those involved. I know plans are in hand for an awareness day next month covering all aspects of living with a neurological condition, and I'm sure this will be both well received and well attended. But as Angela Monteith explained to me recently, in an island community, MS sufferers and their families face some unique problems relating to geography. While regular get-togethers are held, for those living on the smaller outer islands, these are still hard to attend, and the sense of isolation can exacerbate other problems they may face. The cost of patients travelling to Aberdeen for neurological check-ups are also extremely high, though it is encouraging to see the increased use now being made of telehealth options, where the local MS nurse in Orkney helps support patients during teleconsultations with the Aberdeen-based neurologist. Not only does this save money, but it reduces the physical strain caused to the patient by excessive travel. Its application in Orkney may be most obvious, but I'm sure that greater use can be made of telehealth options elsewhere in Scotland. Presiding Officer, these examples of where innovative solutions are being found to meet the needs of MS sufferers in different parts of the country should give us all confidence that we can move away from the current postcode lottery in terms of service provision. Orkney may top the world's league table for MS, but this is a disease that affects all parts of the country. As MSPs, we have a role to play in better understanding the needs of sufferers, raising awareness of the disease and the forms it can take, and pressing health boards in our constituencies and regions to ensure standards are being met. Just a few things to be getting on with ahead of MS Week, starting on the 29th of April. Meantime, thanks again to colleagues for your support and in advance of your contributions. Thanks to the MS Society, particularly Angela Monteith, for the advice and expertise they've provided. And thanks to me, the reputation of our Viking ancestors is a little less tarnished this evening. Thank you.
George Adam, followed by Jackie Bailey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of the reasons why I was wanting to talk in this debate was I was going to say my wife Stacey has obviously MS, and I know that you've been involved with Presiding Officer with the Multiple-Sclerosis Society of Scotland for some time, and I declare my interest in the fact that it affects me very personally with regards to that. And I've probably, although Liam-McArthur brought up the debate about Orkney, and I'm aware of the situation in Orkney because of a documentary Elizabeth Quigley did a number of years ago with regards to how exactly we in Scotland seem to have MS more per head per population than anywhere else, and that was one of the reasons why I found out about that then as well. So it's one of these things, Presiding Officer, I'll probably talk from a very personal point of view, because MS is a strange condition. It's something that I never knew much about before I met Stacey, and like a lot of people, you have a misunderstanding of the condition as well, from the point of view that you get a fair idea, as Liam-McArthur already said, that people will end up in a wheelchair or they will end up not being able to work or anything like that. And quite the opposite is true. Most of the people that I've found are very motivated people. I don't know if it's because of the condition they have that's made them that way, or whether it's actually, but they all seem to be very, it's almost like the Frank Sinatra song, That's Life. You know, I fall down, I get back up, and I just keep moving on. That's the way a lot of people with MS literally kind of deal with life as things go on. But there's no reason how, why, and just why we have it here in Scotland. And there's many reasons where I've had a situation with myself, with my wife. I'll tell you about some. Stacey will probably kill me from actually saying some of the personal stuff. But last week we had that conversation where she said, "That's me, George. It's getting worse." So she's more or less given me, "This is me checking out, George. The time's out." She promised when we get married she would actually be gone by the time I was 30. I'm now 44. so she's still hanging in there. But she was genuinely worried, because it's a condition that actually, between whether it actually be the mood, the way you feel, the way things are, if you don't have the support of your family, you can end up feeling that way. Now, I laugh it off and I joke with her, and it probably works for the two of us, the fact that we do it that way. But you've never seen a woman so happy when the doctor told her that her back pain and everything that was happening was because of a urine infection. And she'll be really pleased that that's now on the official record now as well. But the whole point was, when I had involved in the debate in 2011 at the hustings, the very first hustings was a Multiple Sclerosis Society in Paisley in District. And it was a lot of pressure for me, because it was the first hustings, it was in Paisley, and it was in MS. It was almost like a home game for me. So I had a situation where there was quite a bit of pressure. But one of the candidates took that pressure off me when he announced to everyone there that he had absolutely no idea about multiple sclerosis. He was an economist and had even less of an idea how the NHS worked. So suffice to say, that kind of helped me, and one of the reasons why I may be standing here in front of you, Presiding Officer, because he had a total misunderstanding of multiple sclerosis and didn't understand the issues that everyone has to deal with, and it affects everyone differently. I would say one of the things that the MS Society have brought up recently is there's some serious problems that are going to be coming their way with welfare reform. Because with welfare reform, there's a lot of people with MS, they can be okay one week and bad the next. And with situations with the DLA and the PIP and the bedroom tax in particular, there could be issues for some sufferers from MS there. So I would just like to finish with just saying that a letter I received from a constituent, and I was told I had to say this. I was diagnosed in 1989, 23 years ago. No one seemed to know anything. I was at uni and I thought I would important to tell the campus GP. He told me I was a liar and I was too young to have it. Things have moved on with MS. That person was Stacey Adam, aged 40 years old now. She sent that to me because everyone thought things had changed, but they have changed slightly, but there are still issues. We still need to get the message out for multiple sclerosis.
Thank you, Mr Adam. I'll make sure that Mrs Adam gets a copy of the official report. We don't expect to see you in here tomorrow. I call Jackie Bailey, followed by Jackson Carroll.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and can I start by congratulating Liam-McArthur on securing this debate. It is the case that Scotland has the highest incidence of MS in the world, estimated to be something like 10,500 people living with the condition, which makes it of keen interest to us all. The impact of the disease clearly extends to families, to friends, to colleagues, and can I associate myself with your remarks in relation to George Adam. I hope he survives seeing his wife this evening. But we know that MS is unpredictable. Unfortunately, it is the case that it is, as a disease, currently incurable. And too often, people are affected by MS and are confronted with a postcode lottery in accessing healthcare. That does mean long delays for diagnosis. It could mean poor access to rehabilitation, and in some areas, a lack of access to even the very most basic care. But as colleagues have pointed out, the Government published the clinical standards for neurological health services in 2009 to address very much this issue. They then carried out an interim review in 2012, and whilst it did chart progress, we know that that progress was patchy. So, for example, some of the findings from the 2012 review concerned that the momentum to drive improvements will decline at the end of the programme. A requirement to continue to increase opportunities, to spread and share good practice, concerned that improvements would be hindered without additional investment, and indeed a need for a common core data set to drive improvements in neurological services. So we could do more. There still does remain a postcode lottery despite progress, and there still does remain a variation in people's experience of services throughout the country. Whilst we do need to improve access to health services and indeed to social care services, I want to spend just a little bit of time celebrating some of the services provided by the voluntary sector, because they are the ones that actually provide the glue in most of our communities, that provide practical support to not just patients with MS, but their families as well. And, if I turn to Lukey House, from my own experience, I know from them just how important good access is to care for both people affected by MS and their families. Lukey House provide residential short breaks, respite care on a day basis. They have preventative services, rehabilitative services, reablement, intermediary respite and care, physiotherapy, emotional support, complementary therapies. The list is long. But since July 2011, when they became an independent charity, they've dealt with something like 200 patients and their families, providing much-needed care for those who are cared for as well as for carers. And there is a very impressive range available. I'm privileged to spend, I think, in a couple of weeks' time, an evening in Lukey House. And I would invite those members that haven't visited to take the opportunity to do so, because it's summed up by testimony from one of the guests at Lukey House. Lukey is the only place where I don't feel disabled. And that's the kind of provision I think we should value. In my own local area, there's Dumbarton and District MS Society. They're very active. They've got a number of excellent support services available. They recently organised a new drop-in centre for carers and sufferers of MS in Helensburgh, enabling them to meet others with the disabling neurological condition. Progress, Presiding Officer, has undoubtedly been made. Initiatives like the ones I've described at Lukey House and in Helensburgh are available locally to assist sufferers in coming to terms with the disease, and we need more of that, because they are positive examples of what can be done in a very practical way to help MS patients. However, there are too many people who don't have access to such facilities, and more ultimately needs to be done to ensure that patients get the treatment they're entitled to, regardless of where they live. Thank you.
I now call Jackson Carlott, followed by Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by congratulating Liam-McArthur on the moving his motion? I would reassure him about the reputation of the Vikings. I've attended, as many I'm sure have, the excellent exhibition at the National Museum of Scotland on the Vikings, and multiple sclerosis does not feature as a contribution of the Vikings to our society. I'd also, I think, like to pay tribute to the contribution that George Adam made, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the kind of very positive and engaged way that obviously George and Stacey have approached the condition with which they have to live, that positive attitude probably is partly what has accounted for both of them being together still and celebrating continued marriage. I have to say I'm one of those who knows of but not a great deal about, and I think probably therefore I'm in the wider majority of the public. And it was interesting in the briefing that we received that one of the objectives, I think, that MS Society hope for this debate is that awareness is generally raised. So what I know now that I didn't know before, in part, some of it yes, some of it not, is that it is an autoimmune disorder characterised by episodes of inflammation in the brain. It's progressive, but that rate of progression is unpredictable. The cause remains unknown. It's not hereditary, I knew that, but there can be a familial risk. It's not infectious, I knew that, but it can be triggered, some think, by a virus. There's no known cure. It affects more women than men. It's usually diagnosed in young adulthood 20 to 40, and I noticed in particular Greater Glasgow and Clyde, who service obviously the west of Scotland, saying that a record number of young people were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis within that health board last year, a seven-fold increase indeed on the figure that was diagnosed just a few years ago. Its course is unpredictable. It varies from person to person in its presentation. People have to adjust to the diagnosis and not the certainty of knowing how the prognosis will develop. And as has been said before, there is a common presumption that people will be in a wheelchair when only 1 in 4 people actually are. But what it struck me as well as a greater understanding of the illness is the context in which the motion is set, which is the postcode lottery. So, I did go on to the Multiple Sclerosis Society, where many individuals have contributed. And I was struck by one contribution from somebody who had posted there, who said that, they'd said postcode lottery. They thought that was a contentious title to have put. But when they read of people having a great consultant or being diagnosed within a year or two of onset, note I said a year, I'm reasonable here, not expecting a month or two, I really honestly do feel really pleased that they have been looked after well. But my next thought is usually, I bet they don't live anywhere near me. And the one aspect of this that I'm interested to hear the Minister develop is the extent to which, and the postcode lottery term is a crude one, but the extent to which the services which are available across Scotland are equal and where there is more requiring to be done than elsewhere. Because if Glasgow has been quite candid about the growing incidence in the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, it seems other boards are slightly more circumspect about actually confirming what the incidence is within their own region. And that slightly concerns me that in so doing we may be underplaying or underestimating the potential focus and attention that needs to be given as we go forward to ensure that people do have equality of access.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too want to congratulate Liam-McArthur for securing the debate. And indeed, it's a very important debate to be had. Liam talked about trying to shift the blame off the Vikings for MS, but indeed, if you go abroad to other countries, it becomes the Scottish disease, not the Viking disease. So it seems like the buck is being passed on regardless. That said, MS is a devastating disease, or it can be a devastating disease. And many people who have MS go through life with maybe something of an inconvenience rather than an illness to be dealt with. But for others, it can be truly devastating and indeed life-threatening. Many of the people with MS, as was said before, tend to be young when they've been diagnosed. This can mean that they have young families who have to deal with the effects of this, and that can have a huge impact on their children who become carers, but also have to live with a disease that you cannot follow a route for, and indeed takes many different forms, and it's very difficult to know what to expect. So therefore we do need specialist services, we need MS nurses, we need specialist consultants. MS physiotherapy is also really important for mobility and the like. But we also need specialist MS social workers, because I think they can deal with the whole person. They can put the people who have MS themselves in touch with the specialist services they need when they need them, but they can also deal with the wider problems affecting their lives and their families. So I think it's very important, and we shouldn't underestimate the need of that. They also need to be able to point people to advice and assistance when they require it. And as we've heard before, the disease takes many forms, so it's difficult to know what to expect. You don't need all the information initially. You maybe just need some information as the case, as your illness progresses, or indeed maybe doesn't progress in this situation. Can I just take a couple of minutes to talk about volunteers? I know Jackie spoke about volunteers, but I'm aware of many people who have MS themselves but have turned into advocates for others who have MS, fighting for better services. Indeed, Christine Stewart in the Western Isles is one such person who succeeded in getting an MS nurse for those islands. But there are many others who have MS themselves and actually use their time and their efforts to fight for better services and indeed support others who are newly diagnosed. And I think, as part of this debate, we should pay tribute to them and what they do for others. I'll just leave it at that, Presiding Officer, because I think many of the points have been covered, but I think those are important points to make.
Thank you, Ms Grant. I now call on the Minister to wind up the debate. Mr Matheson, you've got 30... Sorry, you've not got 30 minutes, you've got 7 minutes.
You had them worried there, Presiding Officer. So, can I, like others, begin by congratulating Liam-McArthur in securing time, and also the very constructive manner in which he's taken forward this debate, and his stout defence of the role of the Vikings or not in the instance of MS within Orkney. Can I also say that very often one of the most effective ways to get across the impact that a condition like MS can actually have on someone's life is that personal experience. And this is not the first time that George Adam has offered up his personal experience with his wife, Stacey, in how MS has affected their life, and it gives you a real insight into the challenges, both physical and emotional, that it, no doubt it brings upon individuals and couples. Can I say, though, knowing Stacey, I wish him well when he gets home tonight, but I'm sure that everyone would recognise that it's all in our interest to try and make sure that those individuals who have a diagnosis of MS access the best possible care and support that they require. Now, a number of members have made reference to the neurological standards which were implemented some 2 years ago. And we see them as being one of the key measures which can assist us in trying to drive forward greater consistency and equity in the way in which services are delivered for individuals with MS, to make sure that patients receive care which is safe, effective and person-centred. Now, while these standards in themselves are generic, there are 3 very specific aspects of them which cover MS regarding access to specialist services, diagnosis and ongoing management. In order to help take forward these standards, we provided boards with some £1.2 million over a 2-year period to assist them in developing neurological improvement networks. And several members have made reference to the peer review papers which were published last year, reflecting on the progress that had been made by boards and comparing them with the progress that had been made in different boards as well. And I accept that they have highlighted some areas where there continue to be deficiencies and in areas where there has been progress that has been made by some of the boards. In order to continue momentum with this particular area of work, we also established a National Neurological Advisory Group. That's a partnership between the third sector and NHS Scotland. And it's a collaborative group that works together to help to oversee and to support boards in continuing to take forward improvement plans within their own local areas. And that group is made up of individuals who come from neurological focused charities, clinicians, Scottish Government officials and a number of others. And their role is there to look at what boards are doing and to try to help to support them in making further progress, and to do so in a collaborative basis in order to try to help to support further improvement. Members may be aware or not that the National Neurological Advisory Group has developed a work plan, and it's identified as one of its initial work streams the need to ensure consistency and equity of access to MS services across Scotland. And I would expect them to work in partnership with boards in order to assist in taking this further. A couple of members have touched upon, and Rhoda Grant made particular reference to the issue of access to specialist nurses. And there has been an ever-increasing number of specialist nurses within the NHS Scotland over a number of years now for a number of different conditions. I recognise that MS nurses can provide a very important role in helping to support individuals to receive the best possible care, but also in signposting them to other services that they will be aware of that can be used by individual patients. They can also have that valuable role where they can actually act as a bridge almost to fill the gap between the patient and their consultant at given times, in helping to make sure individuals get the right type of advice and support. That type of specialist support is recognised within the neurological standards, and it's very clear for boards in taking forward these standards that specialist nurses have an important role to play in achieving these neurological standards. And I would expect boards across the country to reflect upon that and how they take forward the work that they are taking as part of their local plans for improving neurological services. I must also recognise, though, that although specialist nurses have a crucial role, other members of that multidisciplinary team have a crucial role to play as well. That is the medical staff, the allied health professional staff, the physios, OTs, the speech therapists. All have an important role to help to support individuals with MS, and that boards in planning these services need to make sure that they have capacity within these areas to support individual patients and their needs. One of the things that I think is very important, Presiding Officer, in helping to improve these services is to make sure that we hear the voices of those individuals who have MS or suffer from another neurological condition, to allow them to have a role to play in helping to shape the way in which services are improved at a local level. That's why we provided funding to the Neurological Alliance's Voices programme, which has been specifically designed to work in supporting individuals in allowing them to engage with health boards and other service providers to look at how they can influence the shaping of those specific services. A number of our health boards have made use of that particular service. I'm not entirely sure whether NHS Highland have made use of that particular service, but it's one which we have funded, and it is there available for individual health boards to make use of. I want to turn briefly, though, as well to a couple of other issues that members have raised, because the Motion rightly makes clear that Scotland has one of the highest incidences of MS in the world, and better data and better research will be critical to improving our understanding of why that is the case. Now, there's often speculation about it being linked to vitamin D, and it must be said, at the present moment, there is no definitive evidence on this. However, we continue to monitor the emerging evidence in this area closely, and if there is a recommendation that vitamin D provision needs to change, then we will not hesitate to respond to any emerging research in this area. We've also provided pump prime funding to supporting the establishment of the Scottish MS Register, which aims to collect information on all people in Scotland with a new diagnosis of MS. The purpose behind this is to help to make sure we've got a better understanding of data in this area, which can assist us in building up more information and helping to drive forward further service improvements in Scotland overall. Another area which has been highlighted is the importance of research in this area, and the Chief Scientist's Office in Scotland is supporting a number of areas of research. Liam-McArthur mentioned the high incidence in Orkney, and the CSO is providing some £240,000 towards the Orkney Complex Disease Study. The primary objective of this project is to identification of the key genetic markers, some of which are relevant to MS. We're also providing funding to multiple-sclerosis prevention or prevalence studies, which are being carried out in Orkney, Shetland and in Aberdeen, and it's hoped that the results of these particular studies will assist us in some of the long-term improvements in understanding MS. Presiding Officer, in drawing my remarks to a close in this, I think members have raised a number of important issues, and this is an issue that's often raised within this chamber about the need to continue to improve services for those with MS and other neurological conditions. They can be assured the Government is committed to doing that where it can, and to work with the others who can assist us in making sure that we continue to drive forward improvement in this area.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr McArthur, for bringing the debate. I now close the meeting.